Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Thomas Brennan had built his life like a fortress, methodical, calculated, impenetrable. At 42, he owned a successful private security consulting firm that specialized in high-end corporate protection and risk assessment. His military background in special operations had taught him patience, precision, and the art of reading people. He'd learned early that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford in his line of work, but somehow, he'd convinced himself that home was different. The suburban house in Westchester County was his sanctuary, complete with Lisa, his wife of 12 years, and their 8-year-old daughter Chloe. Lisa worked as a real estate agent for a high-end firm, her natural charm and beauty making her one of the top sellers in the area. She was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and command attention, a quality that had initially drawn Tom to her at a charity gala years ago. Tom's relationship with his own family had been complicated. His father, a career military man, had been absent for most of his childhood, leaving Tom to be raised by a series of housekeepers and boarding schools. When his parents died in a car accident during his second tour overseas, Tom had learned the hard lesson that people leave, willingly or not. The only person he'd truly opened his heart to was Lisa, and later, Chloe. Chloe was everything to him, intelligent beyond her years, with Lisa's bright blue eyes and Tom's stubborn determination. She had a way of seeing through people that sometimes unnerved adults. Tom often joked that she'd inherited his tactical mind, always 3 steps ahead in whatever game she was playing. The cracks in Tom's perfect life had started small. Lisa working late more frequently, weekend showings that seemed to stretch on indefinitely, and a new enthusiasm for fitness that included early morning runs and evening yoga classes. Tom's trained eye picked up on the subtle changes. New perfume, designer clothes that seemed beyond what her commission check should allow, and most tellingly, the way she'd started sleeping with her phone face down. But Tom was nothing if not thorough. He'd begun his own quiet investigation 3 weeks ago, using skills he'd hoped never to employ at home. The preliminary findings were damning. Unexplained gaps in her schedule, credit card charges at restaurants during times she claimed to be showing houses, and most recently, a burner phone hidden in her gym bag. Kevin Morrison was Lisa's lover, though Tom had known him long before he'd become a threat. Kevin was Tom's business partner and former Army buddy from their Delta Force days. They'd served 3 tours together in Afghanistan, watched each other's backs in firefights, and Kevin had been Tom's best man at his wedding. Kevin's own marriage had ended messily 2 years ago, leaving him bitter and apparently willing to destroy his oldest friendship. The betrayal cut deeper than any combat wound Tom had ever suffered. In war, you expected the enemy to try to kill you. But this violation of the most sacred trusts in his life was something else entirely. Tom's office was a study in controlled chaos, with multiple monitors displaying various security feeds and analysis software. He'd been using his own surveillance equipment to document the affair, though he was careful to stay within legal boundaries. His company's reputation depended on it, and more importantly, he needed admissible evidence for what was coming. The manila folder on his desk contained 3 weeks of meticulous documentation, photographs, timestamps, financial records, and communication logs. Kevin and Lisa had been careful, but not careful enough to evade someone with Tom's resources and expertise. As Tom reviewed the evidence, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Working late again tonight. New client in Manhattan. Don't wait up. Red heart." Tom checked his surveillance data. Lisa's car was currently parked at the Riverside Hotel, 20 minutes from their house. Kevin's BMW was in the same lot. The betrayal was complete, but Tom's response would be surgical. He'd learned in the military that emotion was the enemy of effective action. Rage was a luxury he couldn't afford until the mission was complete. Chapter 2. Through a Child's Eyes. Saturday afternoon, Westchester Mall buzzed with weekend shoppers. Tom walked beside Chloe, carrying her new art supplies while she chattered about her upcoming school project. The normalcy of it felt surreal given what he knew about his wife's activities. "Dad, can we get ice cream before we go home?" Chloe asked, tugging on his hand. "Sure, kiddo. Whatever you want." They were heading toward the food court when Chloe suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. Her small hand gripped his tighter, and when Tom looked down, he saw an expression on his daughter's face he'd never seen before. A combination of confusion and something that looked like adult understanding. "Dad, quick into the bathroom," she whispered urgently, pulling him toward the family restroom. "What's going on?" Tom asked as Chloe dragged him into a stall and locked the door. "Shoo, don't move." "Look." Chloe peered under the door, then pointed for Tom to do the same. Tom crouched down and followed her gaze. Through the gap under the stall door, he could see into the mall corridor. What he saw made his blood run cold. Lisa stood near the fountain, but she wasn't alone. Kevin had his arms around her waist, and they were kissing with the passion of new lovers, completely oblivious to their surroundings. Worse still, Tom could see they were wearing matching silver bracelets, expensive ones that Lisa had told him she'd bought for herself. But what shook Tom to his core wasn't just seeing the affair with his own eyes. It was the realization that his 8-year-old daughter had recognized something was wrong and had protected him from a potentially public confrontation. Chloe had seen her mother with another man and had instinctively understood the implications. "Daddy," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why is Mommy kissing Uncle Kevin like she kisses you?" The question hit Tom like a physical blow. Uncle Kevin, the man who'd taught Chloe to ride a bike when Tom was on a business trip, the man who'd helped them move into their house, the man who'd been at every birthday party, every Christmas morning, every significant moment of their family life. Tom's military training kicked in. Assess the situation, control the emotion, protect the asset. And right now, his daughter was the most important asset in his world. "Sometimes adults are confusing, sweetheart," Tom said carefully, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We need to be very quiet and wait for them to leave, okay?" Chloe nodded solemnly, her blue eyes showing an understanding that no child should have to possess. They waited in silence for 10 minutes until Tom was certain Lisa and Kevin had moved on. As they finally emerged from the bathroom, Tom's mind was already shifting into tactical mode. The game had changed. This wasn't just about Lisa's betrayal anymore. It was about protecting Chloe from the fallout of what was about to happen. "Chloe," Tom said, kneeling down to her level as they walked back to the car. "What we saw back there, it's going to be our secret for now, okay? Daddy needs some time to figure things out." "Is Mommy in trouble?" Chloe asked, her voice small. Tom chose his words carefully. "Mommy made some bad choices. And sometimes when people make bad choices, there are consequences. But no matter what happens, you and I are going to be okay. Do you trust me?" Chloe nodded, but Tom could see the fear in her eyes. His daughter's childhood innocence had been shattered in a mall bathroom, and someone was going to pay dearly for that. The drive home was quiet, with Chloe staring out the window and Tom's mind racing through possibilities. Every strategy he'd ever learned about psychological warfare was suddenly relevant to his personal life. When they arrived home, Lisa's car was already in the driveway. She met them at the door with a bright smile, asking about their shopping trip as if she hadn't just been in another man's arms an hour earlier. "Did you two have fun?" Lisa asked, kissing Tom on the cheek and ruffling Chloe's hair. "It was educational," Tom replied evenly, watching his wife's face for any sign that she suspected they'd seen her. There was nothing. Lisa was either a consummate actress or completely confident in her deception. As Lisa helped Chloe organize her new art supplies, Tom excused himself to his study. The manila folder on his desk had taken on new significance. What had been evidence for a divorce proceeding was now ammunition for something much more comprehensive. Tom opened his laptop and began typing a detailed plan. Lisa and Kevin had crossed a line today, not just by conducting their affair in public, but by forcing his daughter to witness their betrayal. That was unforgivable. The punishment would fit the crime, and Tom Brennan was going to make sure both his wife and his former best friend understood exactly what they'd lost. Chapter 3: The Architect of Ruin. Monday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Lisa kissed Tom goodbye as she left for work, reminding him about dinner plans with Kevin and his sister Rebecca that weekend. The irony wasn't lost on Tom. His wife was scheduling social events with her lover, all while maintaining the facade of their marriage. Tom's private security firm, Brennan Strategic Consulting, occupied a nondescript building in White Plains. From the outside, it looked like any other corporate office, but the interior housed some of the most sophisticated surveillance and security equipment available. Tom had built his reputation on being able to find information others couldn't and protect clients from threats they didn't see coming. His assistant, Monica Diaz, had been with the company since its inception 5 years ago. A former FBI analyst, she understood discretion and had an uncanny ability to find digital breadcrumbs that others missed. She was also one of the few people Tom trusted completely, perhaps because she'd never tried to get close to his personal life. "I need you to run a comprehensive background check," Tom said, sliding a piece of paper across Monica's desk. "Everything. Financial records, communication patterns, travel history, the works." Monica glanced at the paper and her eyebrows raised slightly. "Kevin Morrison? Isn't he your business partner?" "He was," Tom replied coldly. "Now he's a problem that needs solving." Monica had worked with Tom long enough to recognize that tone. She didn't ask questions. "How deep do you want me to go?" "Ocean floor. I want to know every secret, every vulnerability, every pressure point. And Monica, this stays between us." "Understood." Tom's next stop was his lawyer, Frank Petrov, whose office overlooked the Hudson River. Frank had handled Tom's business contracts and personal legal matters for years. He was known for his discretion and his willingness to operate in the gray areas of the law. "I need to discuss some hypothetical situations," Tom began, settling into the leather chair across from Frank's desk. Frank smiled grimly. "In my experience, Tom, your hypotheticals have a way of becoming very real very quickly. What's the situation?" "Hypothetically, if someone wanted to ensure a cheating spouse received nothing in a divorce and wanted to destroy their lover's life in the process, what would be the most effective legal approach?" Frank leaned back in his chair, studying Tom's face. "Are we talking about Lisa?" "Hypothetically. And the lover?" "Someone who violated multiple trust relationships." Frank was quiet for a long moment. "Hypothetically, the key would be documenting not just the adultery, but any financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, or other actionable behaviors. New York is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact asset distribution if you can prove financial waste or dissipation of marital assets." "What about business partnerships?" "That's trickier. You'd need to prove breach of partnership agreements, misuse of company resources, or violation of non-compete clauses." "But Tom," Frank leaned forward, "whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. You've built a good business. Don't throw it away for revenge." Tom stood to leave. "I'm not throwing anything away, Frank. I'm protecting it." The rest of the week, Tom maintained his normal routine while quietly building his case. He discovered that Kevin had been using company resources to impress Lisa, charging expensive dinners to the business account, using the company's luxury hotel partnerships for their meetings, and even billing personal travel as business expenses. More damaging was what Monica found in Kevin's digital trail. Kevin had been careless with his personal communications, using company computers for private emails and storing personal files on the business server. His financial records showed significant gambling debts and some questionable investments that suggested he might be vulnerable to financial pressure. But the most interesting discovery came from security footage at various locations where Kevin and Lisa had met. Tom's company had installed security systems for several high-end hotels and restaurants in the area. As a favor to Tom's company, the security managers were willing to provide footage for insurance purposes. The videos showed not just Kevin and Lisa's relationship, but also captured them with other people. Lisa, it seemed, had been telling Kevin details about Tom's business dealings, information that Kevin had then shared with competitors. They weren't just having an affair, they were actively working together to undermine Tom's company. This changed everything. What Tom had initially seen as a personal betrayal was actually a coordinated attack on everything he'd built. Lisa and Kevin hadn't just broken his heart, they'd been systematically destroying his livelihood. By Friday evening, Tom had assembled a comprehensive dossier that would end both of their careers and leave them facing potential criminal charges for corporate espionage and theft. But that wasn't enough. They'd involved his daughter. They'd made her complicit in their deception by forcing her to keep their secret. That was unforgivable. Tom sat in his study, reviewing the final details of his plan. Tomorrow night's dinner with Kevin and Rebecca would be the beginning of the end. But first, he needed to have a conversation with someone he'd been avoiding all week. "Chloe," he called softly, knocking on her bedroom door. "Can we talk?" His daughter looked up from her homework, and Tom could see the worry she'd been carrying since Saturday. She was too young to fully understand what she'd witnessed, but old enough to know that something was very wrong. "Am I in trouble for what we saw?" she asked quietly. Tom sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into a hug. "No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. You did exactly the right thing. But I need you to know that things are going to change soon. Mommy and we're going to have some problems. Because of Uncle Kevin? The simple question pierced Tom's heart. His daughter shouldn't have to ask such things. Yes, because of Uncle Kevin. But whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. I promise you that. Chloe nodded against his chest. Daddy, are you going to hurt them? Tom was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. I'm going to make sure they understand what they've done. Sometimes when people break important rules, there have to be consequences. Like when I broke your watch and had to pay for it with my allowance. Something like that, kiddo. Something like that. As Tom tucked Chloe into bed, he made a silent promise. His daughter would never again have to hide in a bathroom stall because of other people's failures. Whatever it took, whoever got hurt in the process, Tom would make sure of that. Chapter 4. The Dinner Party. Saturday evening brought an early autumn chill to Westchester County. Tom had spent the day making final preparations, reviewing every detail of his plan with the precision of a military operation. Lisa bustled around the kitchen, preparing dinner for Kevin and his sister Rebecca, completely unaware that she was orchestrating her own downfall. Rebecca Morrison was a divorce attorney from Manhattan, successful and sharp-witted, but she'd always been naive about her brother's character flaws. She genuinely believed Kevin was working through his own divorce trauma and had no idea about his affair with Lisa. Tom found her ignorance almost tragic. She was about to lose her brother, and she didn't even know it yet. You seem tense tonight, Lisa observed, adjusting Tom's tie as they waited for their guests to arrive. Everything okay? Tom smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Just tired. Long week. The doorbell rang, and Chloe bounded down the stairs to answer it. Uncle Kevin, Aunt Rebecca, she called out, though Tom noticed a hesitation in her voice that hadn't been there before. Kevin entered with his usual confidence, embracing Lisa a moment too long while handing her a bottle of expensive wine. Rebecca followed, elegant in her tailored dress, carrying flowers for the table. Tom, my friend, Kevin said, extending his hand. Thanks for having us over. I know things have been crazy at the office. Tom shook Kevin's hand, noting how his former partner avoided direct eye contact. Not a problem. We're family, right? The irony of the statement wasn't lost on anyone who knew the truth. Dinner conversation flowed easily, with Rebecca discussing her latest cases and Lisa talking about the hot real estate market. Kevin seemed more animated than usual, perhaps emboldened by the apparent normalcy of the evening. Tom played the role of the gracious host, refilling wine glasses and steering conversation toward business matters. Actually, Tom said as they finished the main course, I wanted to discuss something work-related. Rebecca, you might find this interesting from a legal perspective. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a tablet, placing it in the center of the table. I've been reviewing our company's security protocols, and I discovered some concerning activity. Kevin's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What kind of activity? Tom tapped the screen, and security footage began playing. Kevin and Lisa at the Riverside Hotel, time-stamped and crystal clear. The table fell silent except for Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. The interesting thing about infidelity, Tom continued conversationally, is how it often reveals other character flaws. Monica ran a full analysis of our business accounts. He swiped to the next screen, showing financial records. $37,000 in unauthorized charges over the past 6 months. Company credit cards used for personal expenses, including hotel rooms, jewelry, and dinners that had nothing to do with business. Lisa had gone pale, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Kevin leaned back in his chair, his jaw clenched. But the real fascinating part, Tom continued, was discovering how much confidential business information was shared with our competitors. Rebecca, in your professional opinion, would corporate espionage and theft charges stick in a case like this? Rebecca stared at her brother in horror. Kevin, tell me this isn't real. Tom, let's discuss this privately, Kevin said, standing up from the table. Sit down, Tom said quietly, but there was steel in his voice that made Kevin comply immediately. We're not done yet. Tom swiped to another screen. Bank records showing Kevin's gambling debts and high-interest loans. $43,000 in debt to some very unpleasant people. That explains the theft, but not the industrial espionage. That was just greed. Tom, please, Lisa whispered, finally finding her voice. Can we what, Lisa? Pretend this didn't happen? Pretend you haven't been planning to leave me for my business partner? Pretend you haven't been stealing from me to fund your affair. Tom stood and walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured yard he'd worked so hard to provide. You know what the worst part is? Chloe saw you two together at the mall. My 8-year-old daughter had to hide in a bathroom stall because her mother was making out with her uncle in public. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. She covered her face with her hands, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd done. You involved my child in your deception, Tom continued, his voice growing colder. That was your biggest mistake. Rebecca spoke up, her lawyer instincts kicking in despite her shock. Tom, whatever you're planning, think about this carefully. Revenge has consequences. Tom turned back to the table, his expression calm, but his eyes burning with controlled fury. This isn't revenge, Rebecca. This is justice. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. Within seconds, car doors were slamming outside. Tom had arranged for Kevin's creditors to receive an anonymous tip about his location, along with evidence of his financial crimes. Kevin Morrison, a voice called from outside. We need to talk. Kevin's face went white as he realized what was happening. Tom, you can't. Actually, I can. You stole from my company, violated our partnership agreement, and committed fraud using corporate assets. I reported it to the authorities this afternoon. Those gentlemen outside are from the district attorney's office, along with representatives from the people you owe money to. The front door opened, and 3 men in suits entered, followed by 2 others who looked considerably less official, but far more threatening. Kevin Morrison, the lead man asked, showing his badge. You're under arrest for embezzlement and corporate fraud. As Kevin was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Tom with a mixture of rage and desperation. This isn't over, Tom. I'll destroy you for this. Tom smiled coldly. You already tried. And you failed. Rebecca stood to follow her brother, pausing at the door. Tom, I understand you're hurt, but Kevin's still my brother. This will ruin him. He ruined himself, Tom replied. I just documented it. As the police cars drove away, Tom turned his attention back to Lisa, who sat frozen at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair where Kevin had been sitting. Now, Tom said, settling back into his seat. Let's discuss your future. Chapter 5, The Unraveling. Lisa sat at the dinner table like a statue, her face pale and her hands shaking as the reality of her situation sank in. The sound of police cars fading into the distance seemed to echo in the sudden silence of their dining room. Tom, she whispered, we need to talk about this privately. Why? Tom asked, pouring himself another glass of wine with deliberate casualness. Ashamed of your choices? Afraid of what our daughter might think when she learns the truth. She's just a child you forced to keep your secrets. Tom interrupted, his voice sharp. A child who had to protect me from witnessing your betrayal in public. Don't you dare talk to me about protecting Chloe when you've spent months traumatizing her. Lisa's composure finally cracked, and tears began streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Kevin and I, it just happened. We never meant to hurt anyone. Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never meant to hurt anyone? Lisa, you've been systematically destroying everything I've built. The affair was bad enough, but stealing company information? Helping Kevin embezzle funds? That wasn't something that just happened. That was calculated. He stood and walked to his study, returning with the manila folder that had started everything. I have records of every lie you've told me, every secret meeting, every dollar you've helped steal from my company. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Lisa wiped her eyes, trying to regain some composure. What do you want from me, Tom? An apology? I'm sorry. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Tom's voice rose for the first time all evening. Mistakes are leaving the milk out or forgetting to pick up dry cleaning. What you did was calculated betrayal. You chose this, Lisa. Every single day for months, you chose to lie to me, to steal from me, to destroy our family. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both look up. Chloe appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Daddy? I heard yelling. Where's Uncle Kevin? Tom's expression immediately softened. He had to leave, sweetheart. Come here. Chloe walked to her father, and Tom picked her up, settling her on his lap. Mommy and Daddy need to have a grown-up conversation. Can you go back to bed? I'll come tuck you in again in a few minutes. Are you getting divorced? Chloe asked with the directness that only children possess. The question hung in the air like a bomb. Lisa covered her mouth, fresh tears starting. Yes, kiddo, Tom said gently. Mommy made some choices that mean she can't live here anymore. But you and I are going to be okay. I promise. Chloe nodded solemnly, then looked at her mother. Mommy, are you sad? Lisa couldn't speak, so she just nodded. Are you sorry? Chloe asked. Yes, baby. I'm so sorry. Chloe considered this for a moment with the gravity of a judge. Daddy says when you break something important, you have to fix it or face consequences. Can you fix what you broke? The question was innocent, but it cut deeper than any accusation Tom could have made. Lisa looked at her daughter's serious blue eyes and realized that some things, once broken, could never be repaired. No, sweetheart, Lisa whispered. I don't think I can fix this. Chloe nodded as if this confirmed what she'd already suspected. She kissed her father's cheek and walked back upstairs without another word. When they were alone again, Tom turned back to Lisa with renewed determination. That's the conversation you forced an 8-year-old to have. She's known something was wrong for weeks, and now she has to watch her family fall apart because her mother couldn't keep her wedding vows. Tom, please. I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy. No. The word was final. There's no working through this, Lisa. You didn't just cheat on me. You conspired against me. You helped Kevin steal from my company. You shared confidential information with our competitors. This isn't a marriage problem. This is a criminal conspiracy. Tom walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street that had been his sanctuary. I loved you for 12 years, Lisa. I trusted you with everything. My heart, my business, my child. And you turned it all into a weapon against me. I never meant. Don't. Tom turned back to her, and Lisa saw something in his eyes that made her step back. Don't tell me what you meant. Tell me what you did. Tell me how many nights you came home from being with Kevin and kissed me goodnight. Tell me how many times you looked me in the eye and lied. Tell me how many family dinners we had where you were planning to destroy my life. Lisa sank into her chair, finally understanding that there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. What happens now? Now you pack a bag and leave. Tonight. My lawyer will serve you with divorce papers on Monday. You'll get nothing in the settlement. Adultery and financial misconduct tend to influence asset distribution, even in no-fault states. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Call your sister. Get a hotel. Figure it out. But you're not sleeping in my house tonight. Lisa stood on shaky legs. What about Chloe? She's my daughter too. Tom's expression grew even colder. Chloe is the only reason you're not sitting in a jail cell next to Kevin right now. But don't mistake my restraint for weakness. You'll have supervised visitation if you're lucky. Any attempt to manipulate her or turn her against me, and I'll make sure you lose even that. Tom, you can't keep me from my daughter. Watch me, he said quietly. I have recordings of Kevin discussing his debts, his theft, and his plans to destroy my business. I have evidence of your participation in corporate espionage. I have financial records showing you used marital assets to fund your affair. And I have a traumatized 8-year-old who can testify about what she saw. Tom picked up his phone. You have 30 minutes to pack and leave, or I call the police and have you arrested for theft. Don't test me on this, Lisa. You've seen what I'm capable of when someone betrays me. As Lisa climbed the stairs to pack, Tom poured himself another drink and sat back down at the dinner table. The evening had gone exactly as he'd planned, but the victory felt hollow. Kevin was facing criminal charges and would likely spend years in prison. Lisa would be left with nothing, no husband, no home, limited access to her daughter, and a reputation destroyed beyond repair. But none of that would erase the image of his daughter hiding in a bathroom stall, or the knowledge that the two people he'd trusted most in the world had conspired to destroy him. Tom finished his drink and went upstairs to check on Chloe. She was lying awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Is Mommy leaving tonight? She asked as Tom sat beside her. Yes, sweetheart. She has to. Will she come back? Tom considered lying, offering false hope, but Chloe deserved the truth. Not to live here, but she'll still be your mother, and you'll still see her sometimes. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Daddy, are you going to be okay? The question nearly broke Tom's heart. His 8-year-old daughter was worried about him, when she should be thinking about toys and friends and childhood things. I'm going to be fine, kiddo. We both are. I promise you that. Good, Chloe said, finally smiling. Because I don't want anyone else to get hurt. As Tom turned off her light and closed her door, He realized that his daughter was already wiser than the adults who had failed her. She understood what Lisa and Kevin never had, that actions have consequences, and some betrayals can never be forgiven. Downstairs, he heard Lisa's car pulling out of the driveway for the last time. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. 3 weeks later, Tom stood in his lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Frank Petrov had outdone himself. Lisa would receive virtually nothing from the marriage, and her supervised visitation with Chloe was limited to 4 hours every other weekend. She tried to contest it, Frank reported, but the evidence you provided was overwhelming. Her lawyer advised her to accept the terms rather than risk criminal prosecution. In Kevin's situation, 12 to 15 years, likely. The federal prosecutors were very interested in the corporate espionage angle, and his gambling creditors were happy to provide additional testimony about his debts and desperate financial situation. Tom nodded, feeling no satisfaction in his former partner's downfall. Kevin had chosen his path when he decided to betray their friendship and steal from their company. The business had actually grown stronger since Kevin's arrest. Several clients had been impressed by Tom's swift handling of the internal security breach, and new contracts were pouring in. Monica had been promoted to partner, and they'd hired 2 additional investigators to handle the increased workload. "There's one more thing," Frank said, sliding an envelope across the desk. This arrived yesterday. The letter was from Rebecca Morrison, Kevin's sister. Tom opened it carefully. "Tom, I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone in my family, but I needed you to know that I understand why you did what you did. I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I've seen plenty of revenge cases. What you did wasn't revenge, it was justice. Kevin's actions weren't just about your marriage. I've discovered he's been stealing from me as well, using my credit and business connections to cover his gambling debts. You saved me from years of financial ruin by exposing him when you did. I also want you to know that I visited Lisa last week. She's broken, completely broken. She keeps saying she never meant for things to go so far, that Kevin convinced her you wouldn't care about the business information because it was just gossip. She truly doesn't understand the magnitude of what she participated in. I'm not asking you to forgive either of them. I just thought you should know that they're both facing the consequences you intended. Kevin will likely die in prison. His health isn't good, and he's made enemies among other inmates. Lisa is working as a hotel clerk in Queens and living in a studio apartment. Her real estate license was revoked due to the criminal investigation. You protected your daughter and your business. You did what any good father and businessman would do. Rebecca." Tom folded the letter and put it away. He felt no joy in Rebecca's report, but no guilt either. Lisa and Kevin had made their choices. They could live with the consequences. The office door opened, and Monica poked her head in. "Tom, your daughter's school called. There's been an incident." Tom's blood ran cold. "What kind of incident?" "Chloe got into a fight. The principal wants to see you immediately." 20 minutes later, Tom sat in Principal Martinez's office, looking at his daughter's defiant face. Chloe had a small cut on her lip and a bruise forming on her cheek, but her eyes blazed with determination. "Mr. Brennan," Principal Martinez began, "Chloe was involved in an altercation with another student during lunch. The other child, Bobby Henderson, was teasing her about her mother, and Chloe, well, she fought back." "What exactly did Bobby say?" Tom asked, keeping his voice calm. "According to witnesses, he called Chloe's mother a cheater and said that's why her parents got divorced. Chloe punched him in the nose and told him to shut up about things he doesn't understand." Tom looked at his daughter, who met his gaze steadily. "Chloe, is that what happened?" "He said Mommy was bad and that you threw her out because she was sleeping with other men," Chloe said quietly. "He said everyone knows and that I'm stupid if I don't see it. I told him to stop, but he kept saying it." Tom's heart ached for his daughter. The adult problems of his marriage had inevitably spilled over into her childhood world, and now she was fighting battles she should never have to fight. "I don't normally condone violence," Principal Martinez continued, "but given the circumstances and the fact that this is Chloe's first incident, we're only implementing a 1-day suspension. However, I think it might be beneficial for her to speak with the school counselor." "That won't be necessary," Tom said firmly. Chloe was defending her family's honor. "I'll have a conversation with her about better ways to handle the situation, but I'm not going to punish her for standing up to a bully." Principal Martinez looked surprised. "Mr. Brennan, we need to teach children that violence isn't the solution. And we need to teach them that sometimes people say cruel things, and we have to stand up for ourselves. Tom interrupted. Bobby Henderson learned today that there are consequences for running his mouth. Chloe learned that I'll support her when she's right. Those seem like valuable lessons to me. On the drive home, Chloe was quiet until they pulled into their driveway. Daddy? Am I in trouble? Tom turned in his seat to look at his daughter. Are you sorry you hit Bobby? Chloe considered the question seriously. I'm sorry I had to hit him, but I'm not sorry I did it. He was being mean about Mommy, and even though she did bad things, she's still my mom. Tom felt a surge of pride. His daughter understood loyalty, justice, and the difference between right and necessary. She was going to be stronger than both her parents. You're not in trouble, kiddo. But next time someone says something like that, I want you to tell them that our family's business is private, and if they keep bothering you, they can discuss it with me. Sometimes the threat of consequences is more effective than the consequences themselves. Chloe grinned, showing the gap where she'd lost a tooth the week before. Like what you did to Uncle Kevin. You told him what would happen before you did it. Exactly like that. Sometimes people need to understand the rules before they break them. As they walked into the house, Tom realized that Chloe had learned more from watching his handling of the divorce than he'd intended. She understood that actions had consequences, that loyalty mattered, and that sometimes you had to fight for what was important. She also understood that forgiveness wasn't always appropriate, and that some betrayals were unforgivable. Tom had raised a daughter who would never be anyone's victim, who would never tolerate being deceived or betrayed. In the wreckage of his marriage, that seemed like a worthy legacy. Chapter 7. The Final Move. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Tom received an unexpected visitor at his office. Lisa stood in his reception area, looking nothing like the polished real estate agent he'd once been married to. Her clothes were department store basics, her hair was unstyled, and she'd lost weight in a way that spoke of stress rather than health. I need to talk to you, she said when Monica announced her presence. Tom considered having security escort her out, but curiosity won over caution. 5 minutes. Lisa sat across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap like a child in the principal's office. I wanted to see Chloe for Christmas. My supervised visits, they're not enough. She's my daughter too. You should have thought about that before you chose Kevin over your family, Tom replied coldly. I know I made mistakes. Stop calling them mistakes. Tom's voice cut through her words like a blade. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was deliberate. You chose to betray me every single day for months. You chose to steal from my company. You chose to traumatize our daughter by conducting your affair in public places where she might see you. Lisa's composure cracked. I know I hurt you, but please don't punish Chloe because you hate me. She needs her mother. Chloe needs stability. She needs honesty. She needs people in her life who won't lie to her or use her as a pawn in their selfish games. Tell me, Lisa, which of those things can you provide? I'm her mother, Lisa repeated desperately. That has to count for something. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying the woman who had once been the center of his world. You know what Chloe asked me last week? She asked if you were coming to her school play. When I told her you weren't allowed, she said, That's okay, Daddy. I don't want her to be sad when she sees how good I am at things she didn't help me practice. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. She didn't say that. She's 8 years old, and she's already learned not to count on you. Congratulations, Lisa. You've successfully taught our daughter that mothers can't be trusted. Lisa broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I just want my family back. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt everyone. But I love Chloe. Please, Tom. I'm begging you. Tom watched her cry without feeling any sympathy. He'd seen this performance before. Lisa's tears had once been enough to make him forget arguments, overlook inconsistencies, forgive small betrayals. But those days were over. You love Chloe? Tom asked quietly. Then prove it. Disappear. Lisa looked up, shocked. What? Sign away your parental rights. Give Chloe a chance to have a real family with people who won't abandon her when things get difficult. Let her forget that her mother chose a gambling addict over her own daughter. I can't do that. She's all I have left. She was all you had left when you were sleeping with Kevin, but that didn't stop you. Tom stood and walked to the window. Chloe is thriving without you, Lisa. Her grades are excellent. She's made new friends, and she's stopped having nightmares about finding you with other men. Your presence in her life is a wound that won't heal. You're poisoning her against me. Tom turned back to Lisa with a cold smile. I don't need to poison her against you. You did that yourself. Do you know what she said when I told her you wanted more visits? She asked if you were going to bring any more uncles with you. The room fell silent except for Lisa's quiet crying. Here's what's going to happen, Tom continued. You're going to leave my office and never contact me or my daughter again. If you try to interfere with our lives, I'll have you arrested for harassment. If you try to see Chloe outside of your scheduled visits, I'll file for a restraining order. And if you ever try to manipulate her or turn her against me, I'll make sure the rest of your life is as miserable as you tried to make mine. Tom, please. Your 5 minutes are up. Tom pressed the intercom button. Monica, please escort Mrs. Chun out of the building. Lisa stood on shaky legs. This isn't over, Tom. She's my daughter, and I have rights. No, Tom said quietly. You had rights. You gave them up when you chose to destroy your family. What you have now are court-ordered privileges that I can revoke any time you step out of line. As security escorted Lisa from the building, Tom felt a familiar sense of completion. Another loose and tied up, another threat neutralized. His phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Dad, can we have pizza for dinner? I got an A on my science project. Tom smiled as he typed back. Absolutely. I'm proud of you, kiddo. That evening, as he watched Chloe excitedly explain her volcano project over dinner, Tom realized that the best revenge against Lisa wasn't destroying her life. It was building a better one without her. Chloe was happy, secure, and surrounded by people who would never betray her trust. She was learning to be strong, independent, and uncompromising when it came to loyalty and honesty. Lisa had lost everything that mattered, not because Tom had taken it from her, but because she'd thrown it away with both hands. Justice, Tom reflected, sometimes looked a lot like simply letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. Chapter 8. The Inheritance. 2 years after the divorce, Tom's life had settled into a comfortable routine. Brennan Strategic Consulting had become one of the most respected security firms on the East Coast, and Chloe was thriving in 5th grade. She'd grown into a confident, articulate child who showed early signs of inheriting her father's strategic mind and uncompromising moral code. The call came on a Tuesday evening while Tom was helping Chloe with her math homework. Tom, it's Frank. I have some news about Lisa. Tom moved to his study, closing the door behind him. What now? She's dead, Tom. Car accident last night. Lost control on the Bronx River Parkway. Hit a concrete barrier. The police think she fell asleep at the wheel. Tom felt no grief, only a cold sense of finality. What about her family? Does anyone need to be notified? Her sister Catherine has been informed. She's asking about Chloe. About custody arrangements. There are no custody arrangements to discuss. Lisa signed away her rights 6 months ago, remember? She finally accepted that Chloe was better off without her. Tom had engineered that decision carefully, using financial pressure and the threat of criminal charges to convince Lisa that abandoning her daughter was her only option. She'd held out for months, but eventually even she had to admit that her presence in Chloe's life caused more harm than good. Catherine doesn't know about the relinquishment. She thinks she has a claim on Chloe as next of kin. Then she's mistaken. Draw up whatever papers you need to make it clear that Catherine has no legal standing. Chloe is my daughter, period. Tom, there's something else. Lisa left everything to Chloe in her will. It's not much, about $15,000 and some personal items, but Catherine is questioning whether Chloe should inherit anything given the circumstances of the divorce. Tom was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. What kind of personal items? Photo albums, jewelry, some letters she apparently wrote to Chloe but never sent. Catherine says Lisa was struggling with guilt about giving up her parental rights. She'd been in therapy, trying to get her life together. Too little, too late, Tom said coldly. But I'll take care of informing Chloe about her mother's death. And Frank, make sure Catherine understands that any attempt to contact my daughter will result in a restraining order. After hanging up, Tom sat in his study for a long time, processing the news. Lisa was gone, and with her death, the last potential threat to his carefully constructed life with Chloe was eliminated. There would be no more awkward supervised visits, no more attempts at reconciliation, no more chances for Lisa to disrupt their stability. He found Chloe in the living room, reading a book about marine biology. Kiddo, I need to tell you something important. Chloe looked up, and Tom could see the intelligence in her eyes that reminded him of himself. She was already reading his expression, preparing herself for serious news. Your mother died in a car accident last night. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, processing the information with the same methodical approach she applied to everything else. Was she alone? Yes. Did she suffer? The police don't think so. It was very quick. Chloe nodded, then closed her book and set it aside. Are you sad? The question was characteristically direct. Tom chose to answer honestly. No, I'm not sad. Your mother made choices that hurt our family, and I stopped caring about her well-being a long time ago. But I know she loved you in her own way. I'm not sad either, Chloe said quietly. Does that make me a bad person? Tom pulled his daughter into a hug, marveling at her emotional maturity. No, sweetheart. It makes you honest. Your mother was a stranger to you for the last 2 years. You can't mourn someone you barely knew. Will there be a funeral? Her sister is handling the arrangements. We won't be attending. Chloe considered this. Good. I don't want to pretend to be sad for other people's benefit. Later that evening, after Chloe had gone to bed, Tom reflected on how perfectly his daughter had processed the news. She understood that death didn't automatically erase the harm someone had caused, that blood relations didn't create obligations to mourn, and that honest emotions were more valuable than social expectations. She was going to be formidable as an adult. A week later, Frank delivered the boxes of Lisa's personal effects. Tom went through them carefully before deciding whether to share any of it with Chloe. Most of it was worthless. Jewelry that looked expensive but wasn't, photographs from before the divorce, and a diary filled with self-pitying entries about how unfair her life had become. But buried in the bottom of the last box were 23 letters addressed to Chloe, each dated and numbered. Lisa had apparently written to her daughter regularly after giving up her rights, pouring out her regret and love in pages of desperate handwriting. Tom read through all of them, his expression growing colder with each letter. Even in death, Lisa was trying to manipulate their daughter, portraying herself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own destruction. He burned every letter without showing them to Chloe. The money, however, he placed in a college fund. Chloe could have that inheritance. It was rightfully hers. But she didn't need her mother's guilt and self-justification poisoning her thoughts. When Chloe asked about the boxes, Tom told her there had been nothing worth keeping. It was, he reflected, the absolute truth. Chapter 9. The Legacy. 5 years later, Chloe Brennan stood at her 8th grade graduation, delivering the valedictorian speech to a packed auditorium. At 13, she had grown into a poised, articulate young woman who commanded respect from both peers and adults. Tom watched from the audience, feeling a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. His daughter spoke about integrity, the importance of keeping one's word, and the value of surrounding yourself with people who shared your principles. She never mentioned her mother, and Tom knew she never would. Family isn't just about blood, Chloe said, her clear voice carrying across the auditorium. It's about loyalty, trust, and mutual respect. It's about people who show up when they say they will, who keep their promises, and who never make you wonder where you stand with them. The audience applauded, but Tom could see that some of the parents looked uncomfortable. They recognized the subtext of his daughter's words, the implicit rejection of the idea that family bonds were sacred regardless of behavior. After the ceremony, Tom was approached by several parents who wanted to congratulate him on raising such an impressive daughter. He accepted their praise graciously, though he knew many of them whispered about his ruthless handling of his divorce and his complete cutoff of his ex-wife. Let them whisper, he thought. Chloe was proof that his methods had worked. Dad? Chloe said, joining him as the crowd began to disperse. Monica said she has a surprise for me back at the office. Can we stop by before dinner? Of course, though I think I know what the surprise is. They drove to Brennan Strategic Consulting, where Monica and the rest of the staff had decorated the conference room with balloons and a banner reading, "Congratulations, future partner." Chloe laughed and hugged Monica, who had become something of a surrogate aunt over the years. Future partner? I'm only 13. Never too early to start planning, Monica replied. Your dad's already set aside an office for you when you're ready. As they celebrated with cake and stories about Chloe's academic achievements, Tom felt a profound sense of completion. He had built something lasting, not just a successful business, but a family based on merit, loyalty, and shared values rather than obligation and guilt. Later that evening, As they sat on their back deck watching the sunset, Chloe brought up a topic that surprised him. Dad, I've been thinking about Mom lately. Tom tensed slightly. Oh, not in a sad way. Chloe clarified quickly. More like trying to understand how someone makes the choices she made. In psychology class, we've been studying decision-making and moral development. I keep wondering what was missing in her thinking that made her believe betraying her family was acceptable. Tom studied his daughter's face, seeing the analytical mind that had inherited from him. What conclusions have you reached? I think she never learned to consider long-term consequences. Everything she did was about immediate gratification, the excitement of an affair, the thrill of secrets, the temporary pleasure of getting what she wanted in the moment. She never thought about how her choices would affect you, or me, or even herself down the road. That's a very mature analysis. I also think, Chloe continued, that she never understood the difference between love and possession. She said she loved me, but then she did things that hurt me. Real love means protecting someone, even from yourself, if necessary. Tom felt a chill of recognition. His daughter had articulated something he'd never quite put into words, the fundamental difference between his love for her and Lisa's selfish attachment. You know, Chloe said, looking directly at him, I'm glad you didn't forgive her. I'm glad you didn't take her back or give her more chances. Some people think that makes you cold, but I think it makes you strong. It taught me that my actions have real consequences and that people I love deserve better than my worst impulses. Some people would say forgiveness is a virtue, Tom replied carefully. Forgiveness is earned, Chloe said firmly, and it can't be separated from justice. Mom never faced the real consequences of what she did because she died before she could rebuild her life and prove she'd changed. But you faced the consequences of your choices too. You lost someone you loved and had to rebuild your life as a single parent. The difference is, your choices were about protecting your family. Hers were about destroying it. As the stars came out, Tom realized that his greatest victory wasn't the destruction of Lisa and Kevin. It was the creation of this remarkable young woman who understood that loyalty was earned, that trust was precious, and that some betrayals were unforgivable. Chloe would never be anyone's victim. She would never tolerate deception or betrayal. She would never mistake weakness for kindness or cruelty for love. She was his legacy, and she was perfect. Dad, Chloe said as they prepared to go inside. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't about accepting whatever people do to you. It's about having standards and protecting the people who deserve protection. Tom smiled, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. You're welcome, kiddo. You're absolutely welcome. The past was buried, the present was secure, and the future belonged to them. In the end, that was all that mattered.